much for attending this and braving through these really difficult times. Really wish we could see you on campus today, and I really look forward to the time when we can actually get you on campus. I can meet you, we can work together, and explore a lot of what I find so exciting about mass media, and hopefully share it with you. Much like the media environment that we're in right now, I never anticipated my passion would become what we see here, the study of misinformation and, in a broader sense, media literacy, how people work. When I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I never thought I was going to set foot in the classroom again. But I spent 12 years as a reporter at the Washington Post, and during the latter part of my time there, I started to notice the larger impact of the dramatic shift in the media environment that was brought on by the digital innovations. And it didn't matter if it was news, it could have been entertainment or advertising. I started to see my colleagues or competitors in the media industry who were trained information analysts, trained at deciphering good information from bad, who were getting duped, who were not realizing when misinformation was being put in front of them. And I thought, if these people trained in information analysis were getting fooled, what does that say about the rest of us? And that's pretty much why I got into where I am today, why I decided to move into academia, because this really was becoming a pretty big problem. And it's, I don't need to tell anybody this, has only gotten worse over the last few years. The course here that I'm going to explain here today, The Art of Skepticism, is something I just spent about 5 years creating, refining, planning, all while the media environment continued to evolve and change so fast. It was approved by the college about 2.5 years ago. I'm teaching it now for the second time this semester, and it's changed every time I've taught it. It's going to change if I'm lucky enough to have you guys in my class in a later semester. And I want to explain a little bit to you about the course, and really how it really explains a lot of what we have to teach and what we all have to learn, both as students and as instructors in the modern media environment. Okay, so I always like to think I think we enjoy when we catch somebody trying to sneak some misinformation on us. You know, try to get us to believe something that's not true. Try to just say, you know, maybe it's a satirical piece. They say, oh, it's really true. We enjoy that. But the part we also have to recognize is, what about when we're on the other side of the coin? What about when we're the ones being fooled? And we think about, I'm giving you a chance now to think about what those experiences were, because it's happened to every one of us, myself included. It happens to us all the time. And we're always thinking, God, how was I so stupid? How could I have fallen for that? God, oh, I was so lazy. Oh, of course I should have seen that. It's not that we were doing this on purpose. We were vulnerable. We were vulnerable to this thing called misinformation. And I think it's important to understand what misinformation really is. There are you hear a lot of terms being thrown around. You hear misinformation, you hear disinformation. I want to make clear, for the point of what I'm explaining here today, misinformation is a word that implies, that not implies, but also, but frankly says, that the information that you're getting is wrong, whether the information was intentionally put there or mistakenly, accidentally put there. Because frankly, if we're going to start saying somebody purposely said that, then we're saying we know what that person was thinking when they put this wrong information out there. And nobody except that person truly knows for sure what that was. All we can say is, what is the information in front of us? So when we're confronted with misinformation, not all of us are impacted similarly. And not all of us are harmed for the same reason. Some of us are harmed because maybe we're presented with subject matter that we don't know anything about. And therefore somebody can just sneak some phony information in front of us. Very possible. Maybe there's a way that the information is presented. Maybe it's presented, it's designed in a way, maybe it's positioned in a way that certain information is highlighted, or something that draws our attention to a certain area, and maybe we don't focus on some of the other information that might help us really see it clearly. Maybe we're consuming it through a different medium. Maybe we're listening to it instead of reading it. Maybe we're being distracted by the visual elements rather than looking at the words or something like that. Maybe that's it. Or maybe it's on an app or a platform that we're not familiar with, and that's kind of screwing with us. Or maybe there's the context. Maybe some of the words some of the information is presented in the context that we don't know much about. We don't have a lot of background in it, or we didn't know about that instance. Regardless of our lack of familiarity here, all misinformation preys on the fact of what we don't know. What is it that we don't know? And that's how information is going to harm us. It's important then to think about what we do know. And we know labels. We know what books are. We know what newspapers, magazines, journals are. We could spot one of those really clearly. We know what makes a movie. We know what makes a television show. We know what those things are. Those are pretty clear. Similarly, we know prominent titles or names of mass media. All of these titles, these are things that, okay, we know these. These are well known. These are things that we're familiar with. We also know things about, even if you're not a student of mass media, you know simply how books are made, how anything on paper is made. A tree is chopped down, ink is splashed on it, and then run through a printing press. That's how print media works. Similarly, broadcast media, whether it's television, whether it's radio, we know that if we tune in to CBS TV, 8 p.m. on Tuesday nights, we're going to see, shocked me, I didn't know this until I looked it up this week, the #1 rated television show in America, NCIS. And whether I turn it on, whether you turn it on, whether your friend turns it on, we're all going to see or hear the same thing at the same time. These are the things that we know about mass media. But here's what we don't know very well. We don't know new media platforms. We're not as familiar with them, frankly, because they're relatively new. We don't have the historical basis for them. And we're also very, very unfamiliar with how they work, as well as the older media or legacy media as we know. And because of our unfamiliarity with this is how, whether it's the content or whether it's the medium through which the content is presented, that's how it could be manipulated. That's how we can be fooled with this. Take, for example, Fortnite. I would ask any of you, what type of media is that? I think most of us would say that's a video game. But if we think a little bit more carefully about, or really understand what Fortnite is, and I beg ignorance on this is something I had to learn myself. Not exactly a Fortnite player. Video games lost me on Super Mario Brothers a long time ago. But Fortnite is becoming a social media platform. Huh? I want to pull you to an article from Ad Age magazine that I stumbled upon about a year ago. And see there the headline, but I want to draw your attention to 2 paragraphs in the middle of the story, or high up in the story. Fortnite, the multiplayer video game with 250 million users, has ascended as a social network in part due to its popularity on Twitch, the Amazon-owned streaming platform. Fortnite has both the largest audience and most streamers on the service, where its live videos and gameplay totaled more than 103 million hours in March of 2019. Fortnite is the new Facebook in some ways, said Henry Cowling. Millennials and Gen Z are much more used to living on platforms like Fortnite. So we're seeing here, new media platforms are not so formally structured that they can only serve one purpose. They're more malleable. They can fit different ways. They can adapt to different environments. And we don't understand that. We look at NBC, that's a television network. We look at the New York Times, that's a newspaper. We don't think of them as information hubs that can transmit information through various media, okay? And that's one of the problems that we struggle with media platforms. We also don't understand the labels that we've attached to new media. We understood labels very well for old media. But because we don't understand these new labels, it's another way we can manipulate content. I'll throw these two terms out at you. Native advertising, sponsored content, they should be familiar, because if they're not, then you've probably been fooled by a piece or several pieces of either native advertising or sponsored content. Direct your attention, I think, to a study that was done by Stanford's graduate school in 2016, and actually was just updated last December, which showed where they pulled middle schoolers and high schoolers on understanding or being able to decipher information based upon certain labels. And a shocking number, an absolutely shocking number of middle school students looked at sponsored content, which, if you read those words, remember, content that was paid for, thought that that was news and straight information. They didn't realize that that was information that was paid for and told to, kind of persuade them to buy something. More than 80% of the students, in fact, believe that. Advertisers learned a long time ago, we don't want to pay attention to their work. They figured out, we've got to find new ways to get in front of people's eyes. And they did this by renaming their content. Instead of calling it advertising, native content, sponsored content. It sounds different. It's no different. But it's done in a way to make you think, this is not advertising, this is something different. This is the kind of content that I'm looking for. So what do we do? How do we adapt to this field? I've come up with three general broad-based ideas and kind of behavioral changes that we can all make to kind of adapt to them, okay? First one is, we've got to break these old habits that we have, or these ideas of this is conventional wisdom, this is what we've thought to be. We are in a new information environment. We have to approach information differently. We have long thought, if it's printed, if it's published, if it's broadcast out, then there's some sense of legitimacy to it. But that's because it was a challenge to print and to publish things. Similarly, we've always thought print media, or textual media more specifically, provides greater depth, has a better sense of understanding than maybe broadcast media, which might be which sometimes the stereotype is a little more superficial. Again, it's based upon the access to media that previous generations used to have. Today, producing and consuming information, whether it's textually, visually, or orally, is equal. There's no challenge in doing any one of them. So we shouldn't say, well, the print media source is more reliable than the visual, because, well, why should we believe that? There are tons of great print sources. There are tons of terrible print sources. We can't say, by a particular medium, therefore it makes it more reliable or more believable. We have to really become more astute and really assessing the information on its own rather than assessing it based upon the medium that's coming through. So that's one habit I think we need to break. Second thing I think we need to do is really need to rethink long-held definitions of words and terms that we've relied on. In just about every one of my classes, whether it's an introductory class or even my senior seminar, and oftentimes I have students who hear me ask this question 3 or 4 times because I have them in 3 or 4 different classes over the time. Ask them this very simple question: what is news? And that's a term that has been totally taken on its head and spun around in ways that we have never thought it could ever be. A generation ago, used to look at news and said these things. Washington Post. If you turned on NBC at 7 p.m., what Lester Holt was telling you, that's news. You turn on all news radio WTOP in Washington, D.C., and you say, okay, that's news. But there's a difference between what the news is then and what it is today. In each of those cases, whether it's the editors at the Washington Post, the producers at NBC or WTOP, they were the ones who decided what's important. And they said, we're going to send this out to you. We're going to tell you that we know who our audience is, whether it's a specific area in the DC metropolitan area, or whether it's a national audience. We have a sense of who our audience is, and we think this is really important for all of the people in those areas. But today, we don't have that. It's most evident through social media platforms. But what really is responsible here is the media environment that's created the social media platforms, where each one of us now can start a social media account, have an audience, followers, friends, whatever the terminology is for it. And suddenly, those people are now people who share your idea of what's important and what's not. There's no right or wrong about what's important if it's important to you. But you can't make something important for everybody. That's impossible today. So therefore, we now have to realize news is what you make of it. And if we think it's important, well, and I've got other people who agree with me, well, then that's news to us. So that's a big change that I think we all have to make. Finally, we have to rethink what our instincts are. We have to, one of my biggest regrets as an undergraduate was not taking more psychology courses, because it's something that I've really read and studied a lot about, in my academic life, is seeing how our behavior impacts and is both impacted by mass media. And our instincts are changing a little bit. As I said earlier, we're more trusting of print media content. Okay? Remember, it was hard to get a book published. It was hard to get something, in the newspaper or in a magazine. It had to be good. Similarly, I was skeptical about social media content. Oh, some celebrity died on Twitter today. Oh, that can't really happen. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Why are we more skeptical? Well, because anybody can do it. So anybody could put anything up there. Of course, you got to be a little more skeptical about that. And then finally, why are we more tempted, but still a little hesitant to trust anything on Wikipedia? Why have your teachers always told you, don't you use anything on Wikipedia in this paper? Something that I've even come around on a lot on Wikipedia is really recognizing how good Wikipedia might be. I know blasphemy for a lot of people, used in the right way, of course. Whatever your answers are to any of these questions, you can see a common thread between all. The common thread is that the gatekeepers are gone. Who are the gatekeepers? When I hear that word, I always think of the movie Ghostbusters. You know, the scene with Sigourney Weaver and Rick Moranis. You the gatekeeper? No, I'm the keymaster. Yeah. Sorry, dating myself a bit. But the gatekeepers were the people who essentially stood at the gate of letting information out to the mass audience. People like the editors at the Washington Post, the producers at WTOP or NBC News. They were the ones who said, this is what's important. We're going to send this out to you. They're gone. They still work there. But the problem is, they're not the only gatekeepers. Now, if you have one of these things, you're a gatekeeper too. All you got to do is look in the mirror to find the gatekeeper. You're the one who decides what information goes out, what information stays in, what comes public, what stays private. That's a big change for a lot of people older than you. But but think about how your behavior now suddenly changes. When you realize, oh, I can be the one who controls whether this information goes out. I don't need to ask permission of anybody. That's a big, big behavioral change. So what can we do? How do we change? Well, a lot of people say the fact checking is, you know, the way to go about it. And I might be splitting hairs here on this, but a lot of the people who study mass media have come up with a different term. And it's a term called verification. It's a skill, much as like a skill of writing, a skill of researching, a skill of public speaking, a skill of, painting, the skill of being an auto mechanic. This is a skill that we all have to learn. It involves not just finding and checking the facts, but finding what the right facts are. Right facts? Wow, that seems a little opinionated. No. What it really is finding facts that help you contextualize the situation, that help you realize, how can I understand this first before reacting to false information? It's almost as if you are anticipating what could happen when bad news comes out or bad information. I don't want us to think of this solely as a journalistic thing, but more as a public information thing. If, the movie, you're going to the movies, you want to find out what time, I'm not going to the movies now, but if you're going to the movies and you want to find out what time the movie is starting, how do you know that information is correct? How do you know that movie is playing at that theater? That's information you want to know. Once we get false information, how they say about first impressions, that lingers with us. And now it's almost, we have to prove that wrong. Well, let's go the other way with this. Let's not accept it, but let's check into it first before we get into the reactive mode. And this is a vital tool that we need today because of all the information that we have. I get furious when people tell me that journalism is dead. Because if people say that journalism is dead, then throw these things away. Throw these things away today. Is print journalism on its deathbed? Yeah, it probably is. But never before in human history have we had such an appetite for, and frankly, such a demand for information than we did today. The beautiful thing about studying mass media at this time for you guys right now is you can basically set the course for how we're going to consume information moving forward. All of these old patterns, these old instincts that we've all had, those are on the way out because they were made for a different time, a different age, a different media environment. You have the ability right now to basically shape the way humans communicate on a mass level. Pretty exciting, huh? How do you do this? Well, in the mind, the verification, the skill of it requires a certain mindset. This comes from, and this comes from a colleague at BuzzFeed News named Craig Silverman, who basically really pioneered, as far as I'm concerned, really the skill of verification and really understanding why we believe, why we approach fake information, and why we're so susceptible to it. The mindset for verifying information is look at information and assume it's not true. This is not being a cynic. This is not saying everything is wrong, everybody's out to get me. No. What it is being skeptical. And what this just means is, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm just saying, prove it to me. Give me a reason to believe it. And then I will absolutely believe it. But I'm not going to blindly believe this or accept this at face value. I can't do that. And because of that, you need to do the work. You need to be the one who investigates to find out where do I find the proof to say this is what we have to do. Okay, what do we have to find to get this to be proved? And finally, the hardest part. When you're trying to prove all of this, you have to take the emotion and the motivation for this information being spread and take it away. And just say, let's rely on the facts. Let's rely on the information. Is it worth pursuing? Do I really believe that this person has my best interest at heart? Do I believe this person is trying to tell me the truth? Or is there some ulterior motive here? Okay. That's the mindset here. And if this is a topic here that you find information, I'm put on my used car salesman's jacket right now. Have I got a course for you? But this is my course called The Art of Skepticism. Like I said, I've never had more fun teaching, and again, had been able to do this in person, you would have seen how much fun I have working and interacting with people in a classroom. But I have never had more fun in a class with this than this one. It's a chance really for all of us to really share our media experiences, to see, oh, here's how I caught somebody, or, oh man, I can't believe I got that. And we kind of let our guards down a little bit, but we really learn a lot from our mistakes here. And it's a class, like I said, that is never taught the same way twice, but it's a class that I have students from last year keep coming back to me and saying, hey, remember when we talked about this? Yeah, I do. I'm glad you do too. I really appreciate your time here. I really appreciate your interest, not just in my program, but also in Hood College. And if there is anything that I can do to help better explain the communication arts program, to help better answer the questions of can Hood College provide what you want in your education, please contact me. My contact information is right there. I want to be able to give you the best experience possible in your experience. My college experience was wonderful, and I want to make sure that yours is too. Thanks so much. Hope to see you soon.